Hi, my name is Dawn Fallik, and I'm an associate professor at the University of Delaware, and I'm also a reporter. I've been a reporter for over 20 years now, more than 20 years, and I mostly focus on medical reporting. I specialize in medical errors and neurology in particular. My name is spelled DawnFallik. I'm 49 years old, and I live here in West Philadelphia. I live on a small block. There are only 12 houses on the block, and so we're all sort of in each other's business. We're all in lockdown together. We um, we don't have a lot of open space. We all have a porch and a little garden, and but we don't have like an acre to run around kind of a thing. And it's pretty dense out here. So if you go for a walk, you're going to see people, usually not wearing masks. That's a whole other thing. Um, so I was a reporter. I started working for the Badger Herald at Madison, Wisconsin. And I've been a reporter, worked at the Associated Press and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I went to graduate school for database analysis at the University of Missouri, and then went to the Philadelphia Inquirer, and then was laid off there. They laid off pretty much everybody under 40. And I got lucky. I had been teaching on and off as an adjunct since graduate school, and the University of Delaware had an opening and they asked if I could jump in. I was like, sure. So I have been teaching at the university since 2007. I'm a full-time professor there, and then I'm an associate professor, which means absolutely nothing because I'm not on tenure track. I still continue to write. I mostly write medical stories. I write for the Washington Post, Neurology Today, Science News, NPR. Um, so I write a variety of stories, and I continue to write while I'm teaching. I mostly teach journalism classes, beginning and advanced. I also teach a medical writing class. I work with pre-pharma, pre-med students to teach them how to communicate to the public. Here's a study, some patient has come in, should I take this drug or not? And I also help run a program called Words for Nerds, which is for graduate STEM students. And it's very similar. We have a seminar series where we teach them, you have your research. How do you talk about your research on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram? How do you talk about it to the mainstream media, so that it's accessible to the public? And really, it's really exciting to see students to develop those communication skills. So that's what I mostly do. And I'm putting on and off my glasses because they glare. Some people don't have that glare, but I do. And I'm looking at the questions that I ask everybody else. So my life pre-pandemic was sort of in transition. When I'm teaching, I teach, fall and spring semester. I usually teach Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'm not a great morning person. I was a night reporter for a long time. So I'm still a nighttime kind of girl. So I wake up at like 7:38, whatever the last possible minute is, take care of the animals, I was going to say try and exercise, but that's not really true. And then I would just get in the car with a vat of coffee and go. And I'd get to school by like 9:30, 10. I teach until about 3. And then I have office hours, meetings, more meetings. I would get home. I have about an hour commute on a good day because I live in Philadelphia and I work in Delaware. So uh, it's a good hour commute. And then I get back home. Um, Before the pandemic hit, um, so last June, it's now May 3rd, so almost a year ago, I had surgery. And during the surgery, um, they found it was surgery for something else. It was a routine surgery, but they found a tumor next to my pancreas. And I had to heal from that first surgery before they could do the second surgery. And so I knew that was coming up. So that really had been hanging over my head since they found the tumor last May, almost exactly a year ago. So that sort of had been hanging over my head because they didn't know if it was cancerous or not. They didn't know how fast it was going to grow. Like they monitor it, but so it took a couple months to heal from the first surgery. And August 31st, I was able to go back to dance class, which I hadn't been able to do for 5 years. Um, I have an autoimmune disease that um, when it flares up, I have trouble walking and bouncing. They don't really know what it is, but it makes it very painful to move. And so I was determined to get back to dance class. That was my dream. And I was able to take my first dance class in probably a decade, August 31st. And so September, October, November, December. So for 4 months, I was an Amazonian gym queen. I lifted weights 3 times a week. I do resistance training, but also I did like the deadlifts and and a million squats. And then at night I would go to dance class. So I had dance class probably 3-4 times a week, different kinds of class, and it was the happiest I had been in a really long time. I felt like myself again, but I had the surgery hanging on, and my hope was to put off the tumor surgery as long as possible. And we had originally planned it for the end of February. But then the tumor, which I named Seymour, by the way, so Seymour started growing, and the doctor, I was very lucky to have the surgeon I had. He's like, yeah, we need to move this up before it starts blocking things. So um, really, it's May 3rd now, and I have been in lockdown since the surgery date, which was June 9th. And my last dance class was the night of June 8th. So I really got it in there. And my plan had been that, the surgery, it was not a light surgery. I got very lucky. I had a couple little complications, but my goal had been to make myself as strong as I possibly could. And the doctor had said no doing anything for 3 months. He's like, you can walk and slowly. So that's what I did. But by the time I was ready to go to physical therapy and start doing light swimming, things like that again. So January, February, March, everything had locked down. And I got very lucky in that we had moved the surgery forward, because I can't imagine having it now. So yeah, so that was my life pre-COVID. It was a lot of gym. Gym and teaching and grading. And then I made sure to go out a couple times a week. I love going to plays and, of course, dance performances and going out to coffee and, really doing anything. I really like new experiences. Um, and, but, it's hard. Teaching is tiring and grading is the world's biggest time suck. And although I love the students, uh, it's you had to force yourself to go out and see people face to face, and um, and sometimes it was really hard because it's way easier to stay inside. And part of my worry with all this is that we've gotten so used to staying inside now that it's going to be really hard. If cancel culture was big before, what's it going to be like now? So that was my life pre-COVID. I live, as I said, in West Philadelphia. I live in what's called a twin. So I have their two houses kind of smushed together. And my next door neighbor is an ICU surgeon at Children's Hospital. So there are a lot of healthcare workers who live around here. And so we know what's going on. So that was my life pre-COVID. All right, let's see, what else do I ask here? Talked about things that I enjoyed, my social life. I mostly talk to people on the phone. I have friends from all periods of my life. I talk to my closest friends from high school, from Valerie is from high school. Lorna is from my college roommate. Kelly is I worked with at the Inquirer. So like we talk by phone regularly, and usually by email a couple times a week. I talk to my family at least a couple times a week, and by phone. Um, I'm not very good with text. I'm good with quick, like I'm running late kind of things, but I'm not good at having a conversation by text because you can't tell tone. And I miss hearing people laugh, or I know from the moment my friend picks up the phone and says hello, I know if she's had a bad day, and you can't really tell that by text. So I was not big on that. I was very active on social media. I am, particularly Facebook, because I'm old, and also Twitter. And I follow a lot of medical personnel on Twitter, a lot of epidemiologists, nurses, infectious disease doctors, um, people who talk about what's going on, the research they're doing, what they're seeing. So I read the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Philadelphia Inquirer. I listen in on CNN. Um, yeah, I read a lot. I read a lot of news because it's what I do. Eating habits. Oh, I eat perfectly clean all the time. Doesn't everybody? I get a lot of that, and I'm like, that's nice. So I did lose before the second surgery. I lost 85 pounds. I had always been really heavy when I got the autoimmune disease, and it made it really hard to move. It made things worse. I say that hiding my double chin. Uh, so I track everything I eat. I try to eat mostly protein. I eat a lot of eggs. I eat beans. Um, I cut out all diet soda. That was really hard. The diet soda was hard. I don't eat bread. I do eat, sweet potatoes. I eat beans. I eat refried beans, fat-free refried beans. I have cream in my coffee. You know, I just ate some bugles. I don't remember where I put them, but it's not. I'm not crazy about it, but I do try and pay attention. I have another 50 pounds to go, and it's a fight. It's a fight. I don't enjoy cooking at all. I'm like everybody seems to be baking bread. I'm not one of those people who can taste something and be like, needs cumin. Like I have no idea. And it's just me, so I don't have anybody else to cook for or to cook for me. So both before and after the pandemic, I eat a lot of. I have protein drinks. I have hummus. I have eggs. I have feta cheese. I have raw vegetables because of the surgery are hard for me to eat. Also steak, like broccoli and cauliflower. Uh, Even if they're cooked, sometimes I have a hard time. Um, so stuff I have to be careful with stuff like that. Raw vegetables are rough for me, um, but some fruits are fine. That this is very exciting. So nothing really changed except that I made sure to stock up on protein drinks and eggs and things like that. Let's see. How do I use my computer at work? When I taught, it was a mix. So it's a mix of lecture, and it was also, it's a very hands-on class. It's a writing class, so there's a lot of writing. Students turned in their papers electronically. I didn't really use Zoom for class very much, maybe once or twice a semester if the weather was bad or I was having some sort of flare and I couldn't walk, but it was pretty rare. And I mostly did all of my interviews for my stories by phone or in person where I could. So, that wasn't that big of a change. We didn't have any meetings online at all. One of the questions here is, do you like your work? I love the teaching. The teaching is awesome. The grading is rough. Um, I was a reporter for a really long time, and to be a reporter, you need to be direct and fast, and you don't play a lot of games. There isn't time for that. You tend to have that kind of humor. None of this translates well into academia. I'm I tend to knock over a lot of china without intending to. Um, I'm frustrated by how slow things are. Um, I am not a tenured faculty member. I'm what's called continuing track. So right now, I don't know if I'm going to have a job in the fall. We just had a faculty meeting, and we usually have 4,500 freshmen signed up, and I think they said we had 1,500. So there may not be classes to teach. And I'm on a rolling contract, and my rolling contract is up in December. So we'll see what happens. But it's tough times all over the place, and we, we won't know for sure until August. And we don't know at this moment. It's May, and I don't know if I'm teaching online. My hope is that I'll teach online because I don't think it will be safe to bring students back in the fall at this point. I mean, one student with COVID in a dorm, and that's the end of that. And it's really hard for students to schlep in and schlep all their stuff and establish an apartment and then have to go home. And they already had to do that once. I'm hoping the university is being very careful so that we don't put them in that position again. Um, I say a lot. I notice that now. How did I first hear about the virus? What were my thoughts? I first heard about the virus. I started hearing about it probably through the Washington Post and the New York Times, and also through Twitter. A number of infectious disease doctors and epidemiologists were talking about the virus in China, and they were concerned at how fast it would spread. And it wasn't a question of will it get to the United States? The question was when. When is it going to get here, and how can we prepare? And at first I was kind of like, it's going to be like SARS where it breaks out, but then we'll have it under control by the time it gets here. And then once we had that outbreak at the nursing home in Seattle, I think that was the big wake up call for a lot of people, because it wasn't somebody who just came from China. It was a lot of people, and they were dead. And it was clear it was passing through the community. And about then, there started being a lot of medical disagreement. Like, I remember I got into this huge fight with a doctor on Twitter because they were insisting that masks weren't really helpful. And I, I got into this fight with my former colleagues at the Inquirer who were just insistent that masks were not useful. And it didn't make any sense to me. Like, if they're useful in flu, and if doctors wear them in the hospital to prevent infection, why wouldn't we all be wearing masks? Like, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. And I think we made a lot of mistakes, really early on, which have cost a lot of people their lives, their livelihood. And so, right away, once it hit Seattle, I was scared. So those were my thoughts. How did I prepare? So, there are a couple things that I did. I stocked up on 3 months of vitamins and medication. Because of the surgery, I couldn't, and I still can't carry very heavy weights. So every time I would go to the store, and this was before we were wearing masks or anything, this was really, I would say, like the middle of February. That's about when I started being able to drive. I'd say early February, middle of February. When I would go to the store, I would just pick up a couple extra things, so a couple extra cans of beans, an extra bag of onions. I ordered some protein shakes from online because those are really heavy to carry. I made sure that I had ordered litter, and there's a teenager across the street who had been helping me like take out the trash, and so he brought in the really heavy stuff for me. At that point, I was still having friends help me do laundry because I couldn't lift. So, I started doing just smaller loads that I could handle. What were some other things I stocked on? I had done a BJ's run uh, about a month before, I'd say early January, I think before the surgery, just to make sure I had stuff, because my mom was staying with me for a couple weeks to help out. So I had plenty of toilet paper and paper towels and stuff like that already. So that was what I stocked up on. I noticed that I did not buy enough snacks. So I had gone to Trader Joe's, which is my favorite snack place, and I'm obsessed with their peanut butter filled pretzels, which by the way are not on my clean eating list. Um, but I had bought 3 bags of those pretzels. I was like, that'll get me through. It did not. It did not get me through. And then I ordered a bucket of them from Amazon, and there were 40 servings in the bucket, and I went through half the bucket in a week. And that's when I left it on my neighbor's porch. She has 2 teenagers, two male teenagers, and I left it with a note that said, "Please save me." So I basically make her take all my snacks that I can't do anymore. I think my greatest concern was that I was going to be sick and be alone. And one of the things that you will hear in the interviews, people talking about how glad they are to have their family with them, even if they drive them crazy and that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's not always true. There are a couple rough situations out there that you'll hear about, but I was lucky enough. I did a story for the Washington Post on what writers were doing during the pandemic. Like Roxane Gay had been tweeting a lot about how she was baking, and Susan Orlean couldn't write. She's like, I'm counting rice, literally counting rice. So I pitched a story called "What You Writing, Judy Bloom?" Because I interviewed Jennifer Weiner and Kia Brown and Samantha Irby, and I interviewed Judy Bloom. I never dreamed she would call me back, but she did. She's really bored. And one of the things she said was that I asked how she was doing in the pandemic, and she's like, "Well, I'm so glad that I have my husband George with me. I feel so sorry for those people who are isolating alone. They must be terribly lonely." And I was just like, Judy Bloom, Judy, I'm actually doing okay. And the truth is, I am doing okay. Uh, my mom went home about 2, 3 weeks after the surgery. I had a couple friends come for 3 days or so each, just to help me out with laundry and stuff like that. Uh, but it really did take a while before I could do everything on my own. But I'm actually doing all right. I make sure to I I talk to my friend Valerie almost every day at 5. We take a little walk together. I talk to my friend from college. I talk to my friend from the Inquirer, either by phone or by email almost every day. I talk to my family in one form or another several times a week. We do a Zoom bedtime. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we do Zoom bedtime stories where my nieces and nephews take turns reading stories, and the 3-year-old um, jumps all over the place, which is hilarious. And you know, and every exercise class you ever wanted to try is streaming now. So I took a tap dance with Debbie Allen, and the American Ballet Theater. The ballet master Carlos, oh no, I'm blanking his last name. He teaches his master class on Zoom. So I mean, I certainly can't do all of the things, most of the things, but I can do some of them, and that was like a dream come true right there to be able to do that. Um, I mean, really, Patrick Stewart is reading sonnets every day online, and Melissa Etheridge has a concert, and Rufus Wainwright is wearing a robe and playing from his piano every day. There's something. There's so much out there. Um, I don't have a problem filling the time, whether I'm writing a story or working on internships for Delaware students or developing this project or catching up on books I always wanted to read. I'm pretty good. My big worry is that if I got sick, um, I wouldn't be able to ask. There's nobody I'm going to ask to take care of me. Um, so, and I think that's a concern whether you have people there or not. but really, I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right, Judy Bloom. Um, so when did I start sheltering in place? The weekend before St. Patrick's Day. So the city of Philadelphia, the mayor, refused to shut everything down before St. Patrick's Day. And I remember I had to drive and pick up something from the pharmacy. And it's been a really mild winter here. We had no snow at all in Philadelphia. It did not get very cold, which is really good if you're, recuperating from surgery. But that weekend before, everybody was out. It was a beautiful weekend out, and the bars were packed. People are on the streets. And I remember driving by and thinking, in a month, we are screwed. And we are. And he closed the city down, I want to say the day before St. Patrick's Day, so that Monday, the 16th. And that Monday, Daisy, who just sat in my lap, she had a little stroke. So on the 16th, we went to the Penn Vet ER, and I remember sitting in the waiting room and being like, oh, there's a lot of people. And no one was wearing masks, nobody was wearing gloves, nobody was anything. And, I was there for a couple hours, and, she took her home and she's okay. But that was the last time I was really out in a public place. I did a little bit of grocery shopping, maybe once or twice beforehand, but I was wearing you have to wear after stomach surgery or any sort of major surgery around your core, you wear what's like a binder. I called it my Kardashian waist trimmer, but, basically to keep your stitches together. So I was still wearing that. So I was really not going out a whole lot. And that was it. I don't go grocery shopping. I have things delivered. Um, I have the cat food and litter is delivered through Chewy. I use Amazon Prime mostly for food and Whole Foods. Sometimes I use Giant and Peapod for things that you can't get at Whole Foods, like Doritos. I'm sorry, I just broke Zoom protocol. Um, but and here's the thing about ordering online. I think people will forget is that it's like a little bit like gambling. So with Amazon Prime, you put the stuff you want in your cart, and they have two things. They have like the Whole Foods, and then they have something called Fresh, which does not really have a lot of fresh stuff in it, but does have more of like the snacky stuff that Whole Foods doesn't have. It's too low grab for Whole Foods. But then you have to, it's like a constant gamble to see if they're going to have an opening to deliver for you within the next couple of days. For Peapod at Giant, it's 2 weeks out, and even that's like, you don't know. And at least with Amazon, if they're out of something, like let's say the orange juice you wanted wasn't in, they'll say, can we substitute for this? Good, fine, who cares? Giant, they just won't deliver it. They'll be like, we didn't have this specific brand of orange juice, so we just didn't bring anything. I've gotten some weird substitutions. So I ordered, as I said, I'm not great with the cooking. So I had ordered meatballs, I think, like pre-made meatballs from Whole Foods, and instead I got falafel. I ordered a rotisserie chicken, and instead I got a turkey leg. So there's some weird things that happen with ordering online, but I'm very grateful that I was able to order. I know a lot of people, um, and it's an ethical debate that people have, because you're asking somebody else to be exposed to the virus for you. And I'm not unaware of that. And so I try not to take advantage of it too much. I order really about every 10 days to 2 weeks. I find that the things that I order the most are, I order a lot of milk and creamer. I'm going through coffee like I never have before. Before I would just have like a big cup in the morning, and then I would switch to water, iced tea. It's coffee all day now, pretty much. So I'm going through a lot of coffee and the good stuff. Stumptown, La Colombe. Like there's so many things I can't eat anymore. Like that's my treat. Um, so that half and half, cheese, hummus, feta, cucumbers, um, refried beans. Those are sort of like my core. And then I have a CSA that's every other week that has it's the ugly vegetable one. So you just get sort of, the misshapen stuff, which is fine. So every other week I get like carrots and apples or whatever they have left over. And that's perfect for me. That's fine. I don't, you know, I'm not feeding a family of five, but I am stocked. It is weird. Like I, there was one time where I really wanted a turkey and avocado sandwich, and I was out of both of those things. And I was so angry because I couldn't just go to the store and get it. Um, and I think for me, that's been the hardest thing. Like, I'm an adult, and there are a lot of things that suck about being an adult, but some of the good things are, you can, was the St. Almost Fire, you can get up in the middle of the night and make yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich if you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I can't go to the store if I want to go to the store. If I'm out of avocados or asparagus or whatever it is that I need, um, I have to wait to order it or ask a neighbor to do it for me. I could go, but I feel like the grocery store is going to be the last place I go because that's where everyone goes. Um, yeah, so that's been the biggest change about the food for me. Um, let's see. Um, do I have a particular comfort food that I've turned to? We talked about the peanut butter pretzels and how I've just there can't be any peanut butter pretzels in the house. It's my problem. So what do I do for exercise? So I try and take a walk every day. It's been raining ridiculously for the past month. My garden looks amazing. The weeds are fantastico weeds. But I try to take a walk every day. It's hard here in West Philadelphia. People are sort of aggressively not socially distancing. I was walking and some guy ran up to next to me and was running. He didn't have a mask, and I'm like, dude, really? And I moved over. He's like, oh, it's okay. No, it's really not okay. Can you wear a mask? Because you're sitting here like panting. I don't know. I was taking a walk and talking to my friend who works at Johns Hopkins, and some guy was walking the other way, and he was wearing a mask. He's like, "Well, how?" It just, in random Philly, we talk to each other. He's like, how long do you think it'll last? I'm like, I think it's going to be a while. And he pulled down his mask to talk to me, and said, "Sir, the mask doesn't really work if you're not wearing it." He's like, "You really think it's that bad?" Yeah, I really I think it's that bad, and it bothers me that other people do not, and they're kind of blowing it off. Um, I see the pictures of people at the beaches and crowding at the lakes and parks and stuff like that. What are you thinking? I have a friend who right now her father is on a ventilator. I had one friend at the AP who has died. He was a marathon runner. He had the best lungs of everybody. I It's bad. Um, as far as it, so for exercise, I take a walk. I try and do some sort of emotional. I try and do some sort of I try and do some sort of dance class or something every day. I can't do it all right now, so I do some bar classes. There's a place called Forward Dance, which has like a 20-minute class on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. That's awesome. It's at 2:00, 2:05. So it's right when you're starting to slip into that. Maybe a nap would be a good phase. So that's fantastic. The dance place I go to has dance classes online. It's really expensive though. And there's just so much available. So I can find something, yoga, Pilates, whatever. It's on there. I haven't really had any medical concerns at this time, except trying to take care of myself. I did have to go back in to see my surgeon on Friday, and I was terrified because I had a complication. He had to look at it, and we talked about getting prepared. So back in, I want to say the beginning of February, right when I was able to start driving and I could drive for like 15 minutes at a time, I went to a small hardware store and I bought a dozen N95 masks. And I had some other masks here from when swine flu had hit, and the University of Delaware was ground zero for that. So I had some masks from that era. Um, and because I was one, did not know if I would need to go back into the hospital. And so I wanted to have masks. I didn't know if I would need to ask somebody to go with me, and I wanted to have a mask to be able to give them. And I also didn't know, as a medical reporter, if I was going to be asked to go interview patients who had COVID-19, and I wanted to be able to protect myself for that. And um, so I had quite a few masks, and I ended up donating all but two. I gave them to my next door neighbor, who's the ICU surgeon. I kept two, and I used one of them went to the hospital on Friday. So one of the questions was how did you protect yourself and your medical concerns? I'm you know I, I'm scared about getting sick. I think this is not an easy disease. Doctors don't know how to treat it. They can't figure out who's going to get it and who's not. I just talked to this doctor who's a cardiologist at Mount Sinai, I know, Presbyterian, and he's like, you can't tell. You have two people who are exactly the same, and one will get this disease and they'll be on a ventilator, and the other one will barely feel it, and you don't know why. But I'm high risk. I had whooping cough about 7 years ago, thanks to all our students. So my lungs were kind of scarred from that. And plus, I'm obese still. Even having lost all the weight, I'm still considered obese. And so that is high risk for reasons they don't know. Even if I don't have blood pressure, I don't have diabetes, I don't have any of those other things. Um, they don't know. And as my doctor keeps enjoying saying, like, you're not really that young anymore. Thanks. So I am worried about it. And I think one thing that will be hard to explain is just sort of that sense of underlying fear and dread all the time. It's all the time. Um, you're out planting something in your garden, or just going to your car and people are walking by without a mask. Or, um, you know, I need to get new light bulbs for underneath my kitchen cabinets. Um, I don't want to go to Home Depot. I was supposed to speak at a conference in Austin that was canceled. I'm supposed to be doing this series on loneliness for NPR, and they like you to do your interviews face to face. I can't do that. I was supposed to travel to England to interview the Minister of Loneliness. That's not happening. Everything is a little scary right now. Everything is. And there's no escaping it. It seeps into your dreams. You watch TV and it's weird to see all these people at a coffee house or sitting side by side at a baseball game, and you realize that's not coming back anytime soon. Um, I haven't been hugged since January, and I miss that. I do not miss online dating. We'll say that. But if you're a nice boy out there. Um, so let's see. How do I think others have handled the pandemic? I don't know. I mean, in my little group, everybody seems to be doing okay. That's a lie. That's a lie. Like my brother-in-law goes out almost every day. He has to get out of the house. He goes to Home Depot. He goes grocery shopping. He goes to the store. He goes something. A lot of my friends are struggling with partners who don't want to wear masks. These are grown-ups. They won't wear the mask. They go out all the time. It was a struggle for my whole family when this all started. My nephew was having his third birthday, and my mom, who's 73, wanted to go to Ohio, and the rest of us were like, I'm not going. Can you not go to Ohio? Like, this what?" She's like, "Well, I'm gonna drive." Can you not drive? Like, all of us. She still goes walking every day with her friends. They did stop having potlucks. Uh, but yeah, there were a lot of Generation X children fighting with their boomer parents to stay home. Um, I already talked about how a lot of people are not wearing masks. They are not, yeah, I don't think we're handling it well. I don't think our government handled it well at all. Um, I mean, we're 3 months in, and we're still struggling to find ventilators, and maybe not ventilators, but PPE and masks, and um, testing is way, way behind. I think we're not handling this well. If I was a student studying this 50 years from now, or what do I wish I'd known before, and what would I have done differently? I think I would have fought harder earlier for people to wear masks. I think I would have started wearing a mask earlier. I don't know. I don't, I'm just some professor at Delaware. I don't have any power, but I wouldn't have done anything probably. But I don't know if there's anything else that I really could have done. Who knew? Who knew that it would last this long? I did not think that it would be, we're going into month 2. I did not, I thought it would be maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month. I think this is going to be a really long-term thing. I thought that they would figure out, at least, if not a vaccine. I know that's going to take time, but I thought that they would figure out a way to treat it. And no. So I think it's going to be a minute. I'm guessing maybe this time next year, maybe. And I turned 50 in August. And um, this was not really my plan. It's not really anybody's plan. If I was a student studying this 50 years from now, what would I want them to know about this time? I think I talked a little bit about the underlying dread. It's just everything is weird. Everything is strange. Everything is stressful. I think a lot of people I know have lost their jobs. A lot of people. Um, my neighbor across the street owned a, a popsicle shop. She had to lay off all of her employees. A lot of my uh, friends worked for newspapers and were laid off. I have a friend who's a lawyer who was laid off. People in the travel business have been laid off. I don't know how that's going to come back. We can't all suddenly go to, nursing school or medical school. Um, I think things are going to look really different a year from now. I think I would also want students to know that really having money made a huge difference. You can, you know, the people who are putting their lives on the line are doctors and nurses, but also people who are working in the pharmacy and the grocery store and Home Depot. Right now, there are a lot of protests to get like hairstylists to open up. Um, really, those are the people that you need to put their life on the line for you. Uh, I think I'm surprised at how selfish people have been. They talk about the economy, but they're not saying they want to go back to work. They're saying they want others to go back to work to serve them. And I, I'm surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Maybe I'm just naive. But a lot of people in this country do not have health care. I mean, if you look at how the US has dealt with this compared to really every other country, we're the ones in the huge depression. We're the ones spending billions of dollars. Uh, People don't have health care. We don't have tests. Our hospital workers are dying because they don't have their own, they don't have masks. It's ridiculous and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's an embarrassing time to be an American. There are a lot of good things that people are doing. I think people want to try to help. Uh, I, I I just remember there was this one press conference where President Trump was talking about um, like injecting yourself with Lysol or drinking Lysol or using disinfectant. And the doctors just, Dr. Brooks was sitting there and she said nothing. And I was sitting there thinking, you have a bigger job than this. Your oath is not to the president. It's to us. You took an oath to do no harm, and you know that what he's saying, it's toxic, that people are going to do this and they're going to die because they're going to believe this. And she sat there and said nothing. And that was an example to me of how, like, her job, was more important than people's lives. She took care of herself. And later, Trump said, "Oh, it was being sarcastic." Uh-huh. It was sarcastic. What am I looking forward to most when this is over? Dance class. I think it's going to be a long time before I feel safe in a closed room with people breathing hard. That sounds way worse than I meant it. Um, I can't wait. Um, I want to see my friends again. I want to go to a bar and have an old fashioned. I want to wear something besides yoga pants. Um, I'm probably the only person who's crying during these interviews. Let me just say, that's fabulous. Okay. Um, what do I think will be different once we get back to regular work and social life? I think that some of the things have been really cool. I really enjoyed having virtual happy hour with friends from all over the country. So we had a virtual Passover, like we had Passover by Zoom, and it was kind of awesome because we had Passover with people who were all over. Usually we just have it like with our own like little family, and instead, like, you know, my cousins were there, and I mean, it felt a little on the nose with we're talking, we added an 11th plague this year, and praying for the angel of death to pass over your house. It was kind of intense, but it was fantastic. And I hope that people don't, like, right now, people are all at home. So they're really good about staying in touch because everybody's at there. And I hope that we don't lose that. I hope we don't forget to be in touch with people because from the work that I've done on loneliness and social isolation, you can check out my South by Southwest talk. Um, People are always expecting others to reach out to them. And right now, everyone is struggling, and everyone knows that everyone else is struggling. You're struggling with something different, but it's, everybody is vulnerable right now. And so it seems like it's a lot more accepted to reach out and just say, I'm just having a rough day. Whereas I think pre-pandemic, people didn't do that so much. And also to reach out to others and say, how are you doing? I have a friend on Facebook who every day she posts like, "How is everybody doing out there? How is it going? What do you need?" And sometimes people just need to rant, and sometimes somebody had a really great day, and the thing that they planted grew, which is way more exciting than I thought it would be. Like, who knew? But generally, I think once we have a vaccine, I I think stuff will just go back to normal. Um, I think we'll pretend like this never happened. I don't, I hope we will stock up on masks, and because I don't think this is the first time this is going to happen. I think it's going to happen again, and hopefully we'll learn something. But I've kind of lost faith in that a little bit. Last question: um, What have you changed from living in a pandemic? Boy, these are really good questions. What have you learned about yourself? Um, and one thing I knew from before the pandemic is that I don't do well sitting around. The first summer I had between when I was a reporter and when I was a professor, I was like, "Ugh, I have the whole summer I'm going to do nothing," and it was terrible. It was the worst thing possible. I became very anxious and very depressed. I was in the house all the time. It 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 was truly one of the most horrible experiences ever. So Dawn has to have a project and hopefully a couple. So right now I'm supposed to be in the gym multiple times a day and swimming and or learning how to swim. That was one of my goals, and uh, writing and doing all this stuff. So some of this I can't do clearly. So I started this project as part of it, and um, I think I've learned that I'm really good at taking care of myself. If I need help, I'm good at asking for it. Uh, I try not to abuse it, but I also don't need to rely on other people to amuse myself. I'm pretty good at it by myself by now. Um, and some of that involves, zoning out on TV, but it's also reading books and doing projects like this and doing some writing, and I've kind of found a good balance of it. There's some things that I plan to do that I have not done at all, like 9 million art and craft projects. I was going to learn multiple languages, like I had plans. And there are some people who are doing those things. One of the guys I talked to is learning like Spanish and Italian. Um, some people are learning how to play the guitar. So, some people are really using this to their benefit. And yeah, I'm not that great at that. Uh, I I I planted some herbs. Let's see if they'll grow. That would be very exciting. I did some weeding. Yeah, I don't have any big giant. I'm not writing a novel. Uh, I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I get up every day and I take care of myself as best as I can, and I try and take care of other people and be thoughtful of them. And um, and I try and figure out what the new normal is, because we're not, I don't think we're going back to the old normal, not for a long time. So, um, trying to think if there's anything else that I would want you to know. Little things were weird. Like my neighbor told me that they were having problems with restaurants delivering to the hospitals, that delivery drivers were scared to come into the hospital. And so I broke reporter protocol basically. And I reached out. Well, first I reached out to the PR person who was like, I don't know what to do. Who should you call? So I wrote to PJ Brennan, who is the CMO, the chief medical officer at Penn. And I put out some notes on Facebook in the different groups because I'm here in West Philly where Penn is. And I said, there are a bunch of restaurants who have shut down. Would, you know, I hear that they're having problems having restaurants deliver. Could we work out something? Because these are thousands of employees between Presbyterian and Penn and Graduate Hospital. And like, can we do something where the hospital employees get their food and restaurants can recover because they have these orders? And and Dr. Brennan got back to me. He put me in touch with a wellness person at Penn. There are these two women restaurant owners from Cafe Inez who, were back and they're like, we own several restaurants, we can coordinate on our end. And I put them together and they actually worked something out. Um, so just like if there's a problem, like, people wanted to help, they wanted to be able to solve it, and they actually did. It was really cool. So stuff like that. I did not make any masks. I did not um, deliver groceries to people. I don't know. I'm not a saint. So I'm trying to think of something positive to end this on. I, I do I do think it's amazing how much we learned about this disease so fast. I mean, we had this sequenced like within what, a month? Not even. Doctors were sharing information. People have been really open about what they're seeing in the emergency rooms and the ICUs. Um, they, they are really they really care. You know, people with 3D printers were printing out shields. And people were really creative and innovative because they really wanted to help. And oh, what's wrong with me? Um, and I think that was amazing. And I hope that is part of what's remembered as well. There are a lot of frustrations and a lot of things that I've been disappointed in, but on the whole, I think people are amazing. And that's it. Thank you for listening to my oral history. I hope I'm not the only one who cries in this whole thing, but probably. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And thank you very much. Take care.